There's a person in almost everyone's life who changed everything. Not a parent, not a best friend, a teacher. And most people walk away from that relationship having no idea what was actually happening inside that teacher's mind while it happened. Most people think teaching is about information delivery. Stand up, explain the thing, answer questions, repeat. They picture a relatively straightforward job, maybe undervalued, definitely underpaid, but not particularly mysterious. Patient people doing patient work. That picture is almost completely wrong. What teachers are actually doing, moment to moment, is one of the most cognitively demanding performances a human brain can execute. They are running simultaneous mental models of 20 to 30 different minds, reading emotional data in real time, adjusting language on the fly, suppressing their own frustration while amplifying someone else's confidence, all while appearing completely calm. That's not patience. That's a specific kind of cognitive architecture that most people never develop. And here's the question that's going to sit open for this entire video. If a great teacher can reach a student that every other adult has already written off, and research shows they absolutely can, then what is happening neurologically in that moment? What does a teacher perceive that everyone else missed? The answer is more unsettling and more beautiful than most people expect. Now, here's where things get genuinely strange. Researchers studying expert teachers discovered something that upended the conventional model of classroom skill. The skill that separated truly exceptional teachers from merely competent ones wasn't explanation ability. It wasn't subject knowledge. It was something called pedagogical content knowledge, a term coined by education researcher Lee Shulman in 1986, and it refers to a very specific cognitive ability, knowing not just the content, but knowing exactly why a particular student in a particular moment will find that content confusing. That distinction matters enormously. An expert in mathematics knows calculus. A master teacher knows that when a student looks slightly to the left and says, "Okay, a half second too fast," they didn't actually understand the derivative. They understood the procedure but lost the concept. These are completely different problems requiring completely different interventions. And the master teacher caught it from a facial micro-expression and a timing cue. That's not intuition. That's pattern recognition built from thousands of hours of calibrated observation. Cognitive scientists call it chunking, the ability to compress large amounts of perceptual information into single meaningful units. Chess grandmasters do it with board positions. Surgeons do it with tissue texture. Master teachers do it with student behavior, and they do it for 30 different students simultaneously. The moment a student's pen stops moving during a note-taking exercise, an expert teacher has already registered it, filed it, and scheduled a quiet check-in without breaking mid-sentence. That's not something anyone just does. That's a trained perceptual system operating at a level most people never reach. But here's what nobody talks about. That same system can break in a very specific and devastating way. There's a phenomenon documented in cognitive psychology called the curse of knowledge, studied extensively in the work of researchers Elizabeth Newton, Colin Camerer, and others. Once a person knows something deeply, their brain loses access to what it felt like not to know it. The knowledge becomes invisible to its own holder. For teachers, this is a professional hazard. The more expert a teacher becomes in their subject, the harder it becomes to simulate genuine confusion in a student. The teachers who fight this curse hardest, who deliberately reconstruct beginners' mind before each lesson, are the ones students describe decades later as life-changing. The ones who stop fighting it become the teachers people remember as frustrating and unreachable, even if their knowledge was profound. There's a whole layer of emotional labor underneath this that doesn't get nearly enough credit. Sociologist Arlie Hochschild introduced the concept of emotional labor in 1983, the work of managing one's own emotional display to fulfill a professional role. Teachers perform this constantly. When a student says something cruel to a peer, the teacher's nervous system registers it. When a child comes in clearly not having eaten breakfast, the teacher carries that. When a parent sends an aggressive email at 11 p.m., the teacher reads it before class starts. Research by Christina Maslach on occupational burnout identified teachers as one of the most chronically affected groups, not because the work is physically demanding, but because it requires sustained emotional performance without adequate recovery time. The depersonalization that marks late-stage burnout in teachers isn't coldness. It's the brain's protective shutdown of a system that was never given time to reset. Here's what makes that finding cut differently when you really understand it. The teachers who care the most burn out the fastest. The emotional investment that makes them extraordinary is the exact same thing that makes them fragile. And yet, and this is the part that genuinely deserves awe, the research on teacher expectations reveals something almost impossible to believe until the data is right there in front of you. In 1968, Robert Rosenthal and Lenore Jacobson conducted a study that became one of the most cited and controversial findings in educational psychology. They told teachers that certain students had been identified by a test as likely to show dramatic intellectual growth that year. Those students didn't exist, they were randomly selected. But by the end of the year, the students the teachers believed would bloom actually showed measurably greater IQ gains than the control group. The teachers hadn't been told to treat those students differently. They didn't follow a special protocol. But their expectation changed their behavior in ways they weren't consciously aware of: more eye contact, warmer tone, more time allowed to answer before being interrupted, and students absorbed those signals and internalized them. This is called the Pygmalion effect, and it means a teacher's private belief about a student, a belief that teacher may never speak aloud, can alter the trajectory of a child's intellectual development. A single teacher's quiet conviction that a struggling kid is actually capable produced measurable cognitive gains. That's extraordinary. That's also terrifying, because it works in reverse too. When expectations are low, the same invisible behavioral signals transmit. Less patience, slightly shorter pauses, almost imperceptible differences in warmth. The student reads those signals without any conscious awareness and adjusts their self-concept accordingly. This is what was happening in that moment from the intro. When the great teacher reaches the student everyone else gave up on. They aren't doing something mystical. They are doing something precise. They have formed a genuine belief that this student is capable, and their nervous system is broadcasting that belief through 100 micro-behaviors. The student, often for the first time, is receiving a signal that their brain was calibrated to receive and respond to. The teacher who changed someone's life didn't just teach content. They transmitted a belief. And the student's brain, which is exquisitely sensitive to social signals, particularly signals about status and capability, updated its model of itself in response. That's the answer to the question left open at the start. The teacher who reaches the unreachable kid didn't see something others missed in the external world. They held something different in their internal world, a private, sustained, genuine belief in that student's potential, and that belief silently reorganized everything about how they showed up in that relationship. The cognitive science doesn't diminish that. It makes it more remarkable, because now there's a mechanism. Now there's an explanation for how one person, sitting at the front of a room, can reshape what a child believes is possible for themselves. What teachers carry is not just a lesson plan. It's a perceptual system trained over years. It's an emotional engine running hot without much fuel. It's a set of beliefs about human potential that, when strong and genuine, can actually propagate into another person's self-concept. That's not a job. That's something closer to a craft in the oldest sense of the word, a practice that reshapes both the practitioner and the people they work on. If there's a teacher somewhere in the past who gave someone a version of that signal, the quiet, unspoken conviction that they were worth believing in, this might be a good moment to let that land properly. Not as nostalgia, as an accurate understanding of what was actually happening. And if this kind of deep look at the minds behind the roles people inhabit every day feels worth continuing, there are more professions to decode. The mind of an emergency room nurse, a trial lawyer, an air traffic controller, each one is doing something cognitively extraordinary that the rest of the world walks past without noticing. That's exactly what this channel exists to show.